I am very excited to introduce Kim Stanley. Kim is a professor emerita of the Department of Modern Languages at McPherson College. She taught courses in English and world literature, composition, poetry, and creative nonfiction. Professor Stanley has a varied academic background with a BA in English and Spanish from Trinity University in San Antonio, an MA in liberal arts from St. John's College in Santa Fe, and a Ph.D. in British literature from the University of Texas. Her academic interests include storytelling in all its forms. Professor Stanley enjoys using literature to help people talk and write about their lives and ideas. And I think the way this is going to work, Kim will lead you through it, but I will, I understand it's very interactive, and I will watch the chat messages over here, and I will help relay any questions that are asked through chat. Those of you who are well.
If somebody is trying to get through and you need to interrupt, yeah. I'm used to 18 to 22-year-olds being that is not a problem. That's a problem. Okay, well, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad to be here with you and see so many faces. I'm a little bit nervous. I do this workshop. I've done it many times, but I'm nervous because I don't.
They don't have a microphone?
No. Yeah, I need to be louder.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, don't worry.
They said there'd be a microphone here and I forgot to check.
I can be louder, don't worry. No. Hand sanitizer. That's okay. I can be louder. How is this? Is that pretty good? Okay, I tell you what, if I go back to quiet, then just point at your ear, okay? Yeah, so that I'll remember to turn the volume back up, okay? So, wonderful. I'm glad you're here. I'm just gonna tell you, I'm a little nervous because I don't usually have audiences that are full of experienced writers, you know? So some of the advice I have to give you, the suggestions I make, may be kind of a review for some of you, because you'll have been doing these things, right? But I hope some of it is helpful and maybe some of it new. So, but I always want to start with technically about telling your family stories, writing your family stories. I like to start with the research on the value of family stories. And this gives me my credentials, you know, like as an academic, I would start with the research. So family stories have been studied for about 25 years from several perspectives, but mainly in two. One is the way that knowing your family stories affects you and your personality and your sense of your role in the world and your sense of what your values are and how you fit in to American society. Two, family stories have been studied from the point of view of how they make people adjust to crises, how they help people adjust to crises. And I'll tell you a little bit about both of those things. The oldest study that I came across, it was one of the first that I saw, was a study of grown-ups who they surveyed them about family stories that they knew, that were told about themselves. What is your reputation in your family, stuff like that. And then they did some qualitative research, you know, where they interview people, right? And they interviewed one woman, I'll call her Jeannie, and she was about 40 at the time, I think. But the family stories about her were always that she just never finished anything. So like if you have a room that's half painted, that'll be Jeannie's room, you know? Or if you have a piece of pie that's half finished, that'll be Jeannie, you know? And that was a story about her, and I think in a good-natured way, right? But by the time she was 40, she had 3 failed marriages. She had started college 2 or 3 times and had failed to finish because she told the interviewers, I just can't finish things. I just can't finish things, right? Now, you know there's no gene for not finishing things, right? And so the thing is, the researchers think that her family stories about herself, they gave her some good things as well, like being able to laugh at herself and stuff, but they also gave her this feeling that she can't finish things, right? So that's the earliest study. There's one that started before 9/11 in New York City, and it was, the start of it was a woman who taught special education in the city And now she was teaching students with like learning disabilities, not severely disabled. Her job was like to move them along, like up to grade level and stuff like that. And she noticed that the people who knew more about their families were more flexible, more willing to try new stuff, had more confidence in what they might be able to do, right? And she told her husband that. Well, her husband happened to be a sociologist, and they study everything, right? I remember one university that sociologists all marched over to the math building and studied the mathematicians, determined they were all on the autistic spectrum or something. But anyway, so he got his graduate students together, and they devised a little, I think it was 15 questions. It's been used in other contexts since then, the same question, like, where did your grandparents live? Where did your parents meet? Stuff like that, right? To see how much the children tended to know. Well, it turned out that she was right, that the children who knew more about her family, family stories, family history, were more confident, were more likely to take advantage of new techniques and experiences that will help them improve. And so then 9/11 happens. And here we are in New York City, right? Oh, do you have one?
Test.
Test. Aren't you clever? Thank you, Jim. So everybody can hear that? Is that good? That's good, because that way I can go around and eventually you're going to talk and I'm gonna sit down and have a coffee. Anyway, so 9/11 happens and we're in New York City, right? And I think most of us can remember that was pretty darn traumatic if you were living in Kansas, but if you were living in New York City, it was severely traumatic. And so they did a wider study of school children, not just children with special needs, but a wider study of school children in the same way. And they measured like how much they knew about their families and how optimistic they felt about the future of the city. How likely were they to think that things would get back to normal, And you can probably guess the kids that knew more about their families had a better sense that things will go on, that things will continue, that things will get better, right? And that finally everything would be okay. So I just love those two examples. Now there's more research than that. There's more recent stuff, but those are the directions in which the studies go. And I want to tell you one thing from personal experience, and this is just anecdotal. This is my experience about family stories. I have for many years done groups like this that were about books, that were about writing, all kinds of stuff for the Humanities Council. And I often ask my group of people, how many of you have the experience of the family all getting together at a special occasion? Could be Thanksgiving, could be Christmas. And they sit around and they tell stories, and pretty much probably everybody knows the stories, but everybody still laughs, and sometimes they correct each other and the teenagers roll their eyes. How many of you have that experience? Good. Okay. That experience. Overwhelmingly, most of my folks that I work with have that experience. Well, I spent some years conducting a seminar in prison, mostly Hutch prison, with young men who were going to get out. It was about, going to get out someday. It was about reading books to your children. And some of them had taught themselves to read in the prison. And I counted up, because I had lists, of the guys, which I saved over the years. And altogether, it was about 500 guys. And I asked them that question. And the first time I asked it, no hands went up. And I said, oh, come on, guys, I'm just talking about like Christmas or whatever. And one of them said, well, my parents were both incarcerated. And one of them said, my parents had 2 or 3 jobs. They were working hard. And I'll never forget, one guy said, well, that was when times was hard and we was on the street. And what he meant by that, I'm not sure. But anyway, so I asked every group after that. And out of about 500 young men, 2 had that experience. 2 of them did. Now, of course, some of them may have put their hands up just to please me, but 2 of them did. Both happened to be African American. One of them, his mother was an elementary school teacher. And he said, oh, she was very devoted to our knowing about the family. But I don't know whether their being incarcerated had anything to do with that lack of a sense of the family as a platform, as a base that would go on, you know? I don't know that because I'm not a sociologist, but I think it might be. I think it might be true. Certainly, there's a huge difference between how many of them and how many of you or how many of my college students will put their hands up when I ask that question, right? So I do all that just to tell you, these stories are important. How many of you do genealogy? Quite a few. Okay, yeah. Okay. I don't. I can't help with genealogy. I do family stories. Okay. But I want you to think about when you do your genealogy that the genealogy is so important for a family. One of my grandfather's cousins did that branch of our family, and we all have a copy of it, and we use it as a reference book, and we add to it, you know. But it's not something that you're going to sit around at Thanksgiving and read to each other, is it? Right? In 1855, David Stanley was promoted to a major, and you know, and so was born in 1863, and you know, you're not. But I want you to write the stuff that you are going to sit around and read to each other, or that you are going to pass around to the family and send it out to them. Remember, if you don't tell these stories, they'll die with you. I'll ask you one more question. How many of you in this room have spent some of your life on a farm? If you look around, you'll see, and I would say maybe 10 hands, something like that. When I started at McPherson College in 1989, it was mostly rural folks. And if I asked my students how many farm kids I had, it would be like half the kids, you know. And now it's nobody. The last time I was a full-time teacher at the college, which was last year, I knew there was two kids. One was a rancher. His folks were ranchers in Wyoming, I think. And the other was also a rancher, I think, Nebraska. So this is just an example. Like if you have experience of farm life, probably your kids and grandkids and great-grandkids are not going to know anything about that. They're not going to have any experience of that unless you write about it. And you have other kinds of experience. That's just an example that's easy to reach for here in Kansas, right? Okay, I have given you a handout, or actually I think Jim has. I can see it there. It is so graphically exciting. And that's because I'm an English teacher and not an artist. But you can see it has two sides. I have two sides. The front side is the one with the title on it, Creative Guide to Teaching to Writing Your Family Stories. And the back side is just some examples from my own stories. The one on the bottom is written by my mother, and there's an example for a particular reason. Oh, I have some spares if we need them.
It's the same on both sides.
Oh, it is. Hang on.
Well.
I know.
It's on the same on both sides. I do want some, but not quite enough. Hold on. Thank you for telling me. I would have been just going on and on. Actually, it's not really those examples of mine on the back are not really part of my presentation. I mean, I don't read them to you or anything. They're there for you to look at if you're writing and you want, you know, like a little bit of a boost or something. Okay, I'll just start. Do some of you have those pages? No.
I don't think
No, I think they all double.
Same front and back.
Oh,
It's the
okay.
same on both sides.
Okay, well, I tell you what, I'll just start some of these around and start one over here and one over here. And you know, if you're here with your kin folks and you can share one, that'd be good.
Is this handout supposed to be 1 or 2 pages?
It's one page front and back.
Thank you.
But they
Needed
should,
that clarification.
yeah, they should be different.
That's the-
That's okay. Those are just examples.
I was gonna say
that's okay because I have short term.
We can
Oh.
share that.
Just read it on there and turn it over.
And read it again.
Yes.
All right, good for you.
There's a couple more you can pass.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna take a picture.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. He's taking a picture of the backside. It really is just examples. It's not part of the presentation.
I don't-
It's
This one, just same front and back.
Okay.
okay,
I don't have much of this.
Okay. It's, who has the other?
All right.
Story on.
So we started talking a
Same
little
on
bit.
both sides.
Yeah, this one's different.
Uh,
Yeah, our sheet says the same thing on both sides.
Yeah, a lot of people got one that said the same thing on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah. Copy machines. The copy machine was probably connected to the refrigerator and it was connected to the toaster.
Normally, when we were all supposed to get this one.
Yeah, the significant one is the one I got. The other is just examples that I do not read in the presentation. I'll just point out what they're.
We can pass it around. Maybe you can suggest an email or something?
And also, yeah, it can certainly, the handout could be emailed to everybody.
Do you have an email address?
I'll make sure it gets on.
I've got a sign up that I'm getting
Be on the
ready to.
website.
Thank you.
Excellent. Good. Okay. As I say, it's not anything, it's just examples.
I'll look later.
Okay, so I want us to think for a minute about, many of you are doing genealogy, and I want you to think for a minute about how the truths, and many of you are writers, how are the truths of storytelling different from the truths of genealogy? How are they different?
I have to think
Okay,
about that.
facts and the truths of genealogy, right? Facts. Yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot, I think with family stories,
Mhm.
we hear them growing up and we always hear maybe the same story and we don't necessarily think about what perspective it's coming from. It's just
Right.
story, it's the way it happened.
Right.
And one thing I found when my mom passed away is I started thinking, well, I'd like some more information about so-and-so, or, a homestead, or where her grandparents
Right.
grew up, or something like that. And I thought, who's gonna know these stories?
Absolutely. Like, what was their life like?
Yeah.
What did she find hard about her life? And
Yeah.
what were her pleasures? And
She was the oldest of 8 kids, 8 children.
oldest of 8 children.
And so I learned since then that they all know the stories, and they'll tell me, but they know it a little differently. They tell the stories, even things that we've been through.
Okay.
They tell it from a perspective that I've never heard
I
before.
I'm glad you brought that up because I want to address that. Okay. Because the truth of storytelling is different from the truth of genealogy, because genealogy, you want your facts right. Right? With storytelling, I often have people who say, but I don't know for sure that this story is true. This is a story my family tells, but I don't know if it's true, and there are different versions. But think about it this way. In storytelling, the truth of the story is the fact that your family tells it. Because remember, it's not whether the story is like factually true or not that goes on to affect your sense of yourself and your place in the world and your children's confidence in their life and their place in society. It's not whether the story is factual or not. So I don't want you to feel like, and those of you who do genealogy may find this difficult, I don't want you to feel like you can't tell a story unless you know whether the details of it are true, even if you don't know whether it happened or not at all, right? Yeah, go ahead.
I think the story is personalized with genealogy. You're getting to see a glimpse of the actual
Right.
person that you see in the picture of the genealogy and know something about them rather than just names on a page.
Exactly. They personalize the genealogy. She says you get to learn something about the people. I have on my handout, when you get it by email, one of the examples is a story about my great grandmother who reared my mother essentially. And it's an attempt to give my mother's sense of her personality and what she was like. And so that's one of the things you do with your family stories. What does your family find funny? Family stories tell that, right? Do you have sayings in your family that are only family sayings? Okay, you're nodding. Anybody think of nodding? What's it again?
Boskeri. The children all said boskeri.
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 What's that?
Spaghetti.
Oh, for spaghetti. So they say boskeri.
Boskeri.
Boschetti. Okay, yeah. And probably you call it that, right? So, yeah. right, right. In my family, if somebody, we have an expression, good day, Frank. And if somebody keeps asking for advice and not taking it, well, I don't believe I'll do that. But how would you do this? And you tell them and they say, well, I don't believe I'll do it that way. Way back when my family were farmers in East Texas and Virginia, that happened between a son-in-law named Frank and a father-in-law. Son-in-law asking questions. The father-in-law finally said, okay, well, good day, Frank, and left him and didn't offer him any more advice after that. So you can tell that my family is impatient about some things, like wasting time is not a big deal in my family. I mean, it is a big deal, right? Anybody else have a family saying? Yeah, go ahead.
When we girls would grow up and I was the youngest of 5, anyway, my grandma would always say, the farmer's not going to buy the cow if he gets the milk for free.
That's what girls.
That was our birthday story.
That's always
yes.
girls. Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
The farmer
yeah.
won't buy the cow if he gets the milk for free. My mother's story like that was about 2 jewelry stores, one of which showed all their wares in the window and the other which didn't. And that had to do with what you're supposed to be wearing when you go out. Anyway, yeah, I want you to keep track of these and write them down because they're part of your family history, right? And I think I saw your hand.
My dad would say, when you wanted to get a point across, he would say, that's how the cow ate the cabbage.
And that means that's my mother said period of the pickles. I don't know
Oh, yeah.
why. That's how the cow ate the cabbage. That's okay. All right. Notice that these are all lore that belongs to your family. It's like folklore. I mean, it is folklore, technically, but it's the lore that belongs to your family, right? And if you don't write it down, it gets lost. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I think we're making a list here. Okay, so advice about developing ideas. One is find your family sayings. How did they happen? Those are stories that are often kind of easy to come by. That may lead you to 2 or 3 different characters, right? The first thing on my handout here is something you'll be familiar with as writers. Find your voice. Remember, you're a tour guide, and your voice is the reader's guide through the stories. Pretend you're telling the story to an interested audience. One thing I have most trouble with people who are not accustomed to writing is that they'll try to write in a formal tone, as maybe they learned to do in school and research papers or something. I don't know if any of you have ever read like a set of 40 college research papers. Anybody?
Nope.
No more boring thing to read because we make them write it all in this stupid language, not in their own voice. I stopped doing that when I got too old for people to fire me. I had to start with a personal story and then work into it. Anyway, so use your own voice. Use I. You can use you. In my own family stories, I use family nicknames. Like in my stories, you'll see on the back of the handout when you get it, I call my mother Mama, right? And everybody will know, who does Kim call Mama? Well, right? I call my grandmother, one of them, her nickname was Mud. That was her name. There are reasons for that. And so I use those nicknames because I think they're part of the family lore. And I know all of you know, if you're doing genealogy, if you're going to write these stories, you can link them to if you're doing electronic publishing, you can link them to the person in the genealogy about whom the story concerns, or to multiple people. You can put in electronic footnotes. You can, but if you're not doing electronically, you might just want to explain at the beginning or end of the story who these people are. And that's fine too. That's okay. We were talking about story truth versus factual truth. And a thing that I want you to think about is you can also say this. There are different versions of this story, but this is the one my aunt Geraldine, I had an Aunt Geraldine. I also had an Aunt Hectorine. Isn't that horrible? My Aunt Geraldine told. This is the version she told. Or you can say, my brother remembers it this way, but here's how I remember it. And that's okay. That's part of your voice. You can say that. You don't have to keep yourself from being yourself when you're writing. In fact, that's a huge mistake. That's when you should be most yourself. Now it's important to remember that there are 1,000 clowns in your Volkswagen, right? So you have a lot of different ways of being yourself. But you need a voice for your family stories, and it should be very close to who you really are. Okay, so find your voice. The first section is mostly about that. I give an example from one of my stories about my great grandmother. I doubt if grandma cried back then. She reared mama, and mama never saw her cry. So notice that's the way I would tell the story. Okay, you can report disagreements. Read your stories out loud. And if they're hard to read out loud, work on them, because they should be easy to read out loud. Okay. And also, when you read out loud, you'll catch things. I know some of you know that, right? You'll catch, wait a minute, I've introduced this character and nobody knows who it is, right? And so if you read out loud, you'll catch it. Okay, developing story ideas, and I'm going to ask you for some examples here in a minute. And this is it's kind of like the 5 elements of fiction, or as my husband always says, the 5 elephants of fiction. He has a great imitation elephant call that he used to use in class, but they're similar. It's like, first of all, find the character. Think of someone in your family, and I'm talking about my great grandmother. She was an interesting character. Someone in your family, living or dead, don't forget the living, that might be the subject of some good stories. Now, either it's a person you know stories about or a person who is a good storyteller, right? So I'm going to let you think for a minute, and I will not direct that deadly English teacher guy to say, I'll look at the ceiling and wait for someone to volunteer a character in your family, living or dead, that you could write about. Come on. I'm a patient old English teacher. Okay.
My dad was a United Methodist minister. We lived in a lot of small Kansas towns. And
Okay.
I found a lot of
Material.
opportunities and material from the older, and it was mostly older ladies. An older gentleman was a hot commodity
Right.
because the widows would
Because the
always
widows
outlive. So
always
but
more.
wonderful, wonderful stories.
Okay, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great. So he was a minister and he lived in a lot of small towns.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of stories from the older women in the congregation. How about you?
So my dad, kind of the opposite. It's more of a cautionary tale. My dad was ended up getting into a lot of violent crimes and things like that. A lot of troubles. So we moved around a lot when I was a kid. And so I look at his stories and I tell my wife and I tell my son things. And it's more of a here's what not to do. But it should still be passed on.
Absolutely, yes, it should. People often ask me that. Do we tell the bad stories with the good? And I always say, yeah, what's good is a picture with no shadows in it. You should tell the bad with the good.
So I have kind of a similar situation. My dad's notorious for a lot of things.
He's notorious.
Yeah, but he's had some of the most insane stories. Like he ran away to California when he was a kid, and instead of going to a skate park, went to a party and missed the chance to meet Tony Hawk when he was like just starting out.
Oh, the big skate star.
Yeah. And his friend who did go to meet him ended up being an international underwear model and worked for NASA.
Oh, oh, this is great. Okay, yeah. Oh, over here.
I thought, I have two, my brother-in-law from Brooklyn, New York, and he's 91 today, but my dad, is an inspirational story because in a hunting accident, he had most of his face taken.
Oh, wow.
He had an eye left, and I tell the story like a Paul Harvey. I say, this happened in Great Bend and cold weather and and this person, and he had 5 brothers and on and on. And then at the end of the story and how he lived through it and he continued to live and move and go about his business and didn't, he was an inspiration.
Wow. And that's the rest of the story.
And that's the rest of the story. Yeah, my dad, and that's my dad.
Oh,
Yeah, that's how I tell it.
Yeah.
It's always nice to have a punchline,
It is, isn't it? Yeah. And that's a good example too of telling a story not just about a rascal, and the rascals are great, but also about someone who went through terrible hardships, right? And overcame them, it sounds like, in that case. Yeah. And even people who go through terrible hardships and don't overcome it are worth telling about. They're worth telling about. There are a lot of things that happen to people that aren't happy. And I don't want to get, urge you to talk too much about unhappy things. I had a great uncle, Scotty, who married 11 times. Yeah. Or 10, if you count. He married one woman twice. Each of them thought the other one had come into money. And it wasn't true. Scotty was about as tall as I am. And I've got pictures of him and one of his wives, who was a tall, thin lady, standing on a tractor. You never know, right? So I think, didn't you have a finger up?
Well, I was just gonna say my grandmother would be the one that I would tell stories about, because she earned the nickname in our family, the legend, for doing ridiculous things just because she can.
Yeah.
She first got on stage at 80 years old. She went to my cousin's bachelorette party in Australia and came skipping back from the airport, apparently. And the family just tells her stories. It's like, why are you like this in the best possible way?
In the best possible way. Right.
Yeah, does it say your name? Yeah, she's wild.
She's wild. So these are stories that you really must tell.
Oh, yeah.
Because absolutely. And you can see, you don't want to think about the stories as always having to have like a moral, or something. But you can see in a case like that, it's like, so you're different. So that's great. Yeah. Any other characters? Oh, good. Got two.
My husband was on the fire department for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
So he has a lot of historical stories about how firefighting was, even pre 911.
Right.
And just funny runs, truly tragic runs, and just the whole gamut.
Oh man, that could be a book.
I'm trying, but I'm
Yeah,
struggling.
you're working on it. Very good. Excellent. And I had somebody back here as well. So yeah.
My grandpa, well, actually, there was a fair bit of mischief in that family.
Yeah.
One of the stories was that he was a carpenter, and one of the guys that worked in his shop was engaged to the relative that helped my grandma in the kitchen. And so one of the stories that always gets told is that the women had made a cherry pie, and Grandpa and Bud were trying to figure out which one made the cherry pie. And they finally complained about, well, if I couldn't make a cherry pie better than this, I wouldn't own up to it either. And so the woman said, well, you make the next one. And so they didn't have pie for a while and made a pie.
That's a good story. If it was me, I wouldn't have pie for a good long while. Might be the end of their pie unless they made it themselves. That's a good story.
Oh, it's going the other way.
I hadn't thought about this for years, but as soon as Anita said cherry pie, it made me think of on the Reno County Sheriff's Office Patrol Division. There was a officer that when she arrived at this accident, she saw the windshield and it looked like brain matter and all that. And it turned out it was a cherry pie and nobody was really hurt too badly.
It put you off your cherry pie. Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, let's look at another place to search for stories, okay? Let's look at another place. There on the handout that you have, I've got look for the character, and then I've got find the place, find the object, describe your materials. Now I put the materials in there on purpose for the people who are doing genealogy, because for example, if you have an ancient family Bible, and I have an example of that on the back, or if you have letters, then describing them, talking about them can be good. I had one woman at a workshop and she said, I have an ancestor who wrote letters home from the Civil War, and he was in the battles in North Virginia and wrote his letters. I thought, well, she didn't sound very excited, I said, well, that's wonderful. That's great. She said, well, we're thinking of trying to donate them to a museum or something. And I said, well, are they surely they're really interesting? She said, no, he was 18 and he only wrote about food and the weather. So she wasn't excited, but that she said about those letters, that's interesting in itself, right? I mean, the soldiers often wrote about food because hardtack had worms in it and stuff like that. Anyway, so So I want you now to think of an object. I'm going back to find, oh no, back to find the place. I want you to think of a place that played a big role in your family. It might be a house that's still there, that's not still there. I had one gentleman in Paola who asked me, well, when you drove into town, did you pass a parking lot at the corner of something? And I said, probably. I didn't notice. I don't note all the parking lots that I pass. They said, well, that used to be a 3-story house. It belonged to my family. It's my family home. I said, really? He said, the 3rd story was a ballroom. And I said, wow, in Paola. Were there lots of balls in Paola? And everybody laughed because they were all from Paola. And he said, no, we used it as a roller skating rink. He said, until my grandmother pounded the ceiling, right? So can you think of a place that played a role in your family? It doesn't have to be a home, by the way. The workplace, one of my folks remembered an old filling station garage that her grandparents ran. Any place, could be a farm, could be a town, small town. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it?
I can speak loud, I don't even need it.
Okay, good.
Over Partridge,
Uh-huh.
it would be my great uncle, Shorty Thompson.
Can we use a microphone, please?
Okay. Over at Partridge, Kansas, my great uncle Shorty Thompson had a hardware store. And it was, of course, on Main Street, and it was down on the north end, kind of beside the library on the west side. But anyway, I don't remember it because I was pretty young. But anyway, he had a hardware store and he had a soda fountain in there too.
Oh, wow.
And after he passed away, they just kind of just no more. It was no more.
He was the last one to run it.
Yeah, he was the last one to run it. But I just remember going in there and sitting up there at the soda fountain and getting a Coca-Cola and ice cream. And that was Shorty Thompson.
And that was Shorty Thompson.
Shorty Thompson.
Yeah, a hardware store would be a good place to talk about. Hardware stores in small towns are wonderful. They really are. And I don't know the names of any of the stuff you find there because I'm just ignorant as a pig. But I love to go in there and look, you know. Very
Jim,
good.
you have another hand if you have time.
What's it
If you
again?
have time, there's another hand.
Oh, good. Where? Oh, back there in the back.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right.
I'm looking for that other sign up.
Oh, it's just one here.
I am very, very new to this.
Yeah.
Like this is the first time.
Well,
So recently lost a family member.
yeah.
Spent the last 5 months cleaning up the estate,
Oh, yeah.
which was a sibling, and the
Would
other
you use the
sibling,
microphone, please?
and the other sibling is out of state. So I'm the one that's taking care of everything.
Oh, bless your heart.
And the lineage basically stops here,
Really?
but I've found things. I have found things that I could probably start writing volumes
Great.
of different chapters. And that's one reason for me coming to this and getting these ideas. But when you're talking about places, and you start, the juices flowing. My grandfather was a cab driver in Kansas City, Missouri. And I went to the cab company.
Yeah.
And when grandma wasn't there to babysit, then I got to ride in the cab with grandpa. And this is back, well, now I'm gonna still tell my age here, but this was in the late 50s, early 60s, taking that. So when you start talking about this in particular people or particular stories and coming to the point of different things, then it's down to one person and you don't have other family members to ask, is this story correct? Do you remember how this story was? Then it falls on the shoulders if you're going to go forward with something like this. So you get to tell the story any way you want, right?
It's on your head. Absolutely, yes, you do. You get to tell it however you want. I think the cab would be a great place to write about. My mother and I, before she passed in 2017, we were writing down the family stories, and we went on just a driving tour around Texas and down to Virginia, and looked at, found the graves, found the places where the old houses were, things like that. It's a great thing to do if you've got a relative that you can put up with for that long, or a spouse who's willing to indulge you. I have an example about writing about a place like that on the back, right? let me go on to objects, since she's talking about things she found in the house. Find an object. Now, the object, anything that played a role in your family's history, it might be something that you have, or maybe you don't have it. Maybe you remember it from when you were a kid, right? Maybe, and I'll give you an example. One of the women, I think she was maybe here in Hutchinson several years ago, when I did a memoir with her. But anyway, her mother had 4 sisters, and one of them was gifted a hideous cookie jar. Just a hideous, you know how people will make their own cookie jar and it looks like a frog and the lid is his head or something. And it was just awful. It's awful. So the sisters got in the habit of every year, whoever had it would wrap it up real good and put it under the tree for the next sister. And it had to be full of homemade cookies. So, and they kept this up. And now when I met this woman, that generation was mostly gone. She was about my age. And I said, well, what happens now? And she said, oh, there are a lot more of us to pass around the cookie jar now. She said, it still seems to be only the girls in the family, you know, because the guys aren't doing it so much, but they were still passing around. So it was an ugly thing, right? And not an heirloom in any sense, except in the sense that there's a good story connected to it, right? Can anybody think of an object that's relevant to your family? Oh, good. Okay, here we go. Is it a skateboard?
Nope, not even close. So my great grandma Millspaw gave me this brass lion when I was a kid.
Oh, really?
I had no idea what it was. I just had this lion for a very long time.
Like a little figurine?
It was about this big. It was like solid metal.
Okay, real heavy.
Yeah, and then last year I worked at the library. I worked in the
Yeah.
makerspace, and this little girl 3D modeled that exact lion.
You're kidding.
And she was like 10, and I was like, that's bizarre because it's the same pose and everything.
that
It looks-
lion.
yeah. And her dad was like, well, that was actually something from like a country club or like a rich society here in town in like the 50s or something like that. That was like a men's club.
Part of their decor.
Yeah. And they would give it to every member. And so somehow my great grandma got it and then just happened to pass it off to me, and I never knew any of the history
And
of it.
nobody knew what it was from or
Nope.
anything. That's very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. I like that.
No, it's just a little segue, but this guy is so good. I took,
Microphone, please.
he said he works at Makerspace at the bottom of our library. And do you mind if so I took a picture of barn and farm and I brought it over there, and he took all the animals out of my 4 or 8 stories and one coming and put them into this poster. So now when I go to do stories, I have this poster of all the animals from my books and he did that. That's graphic designs here. And it's free, except that we paid for materials.
Yeah.
And your wife paid him.
That is so cool. Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah,
That's
thank you.
wonderful. That's wonderful.
It's a great service.
You know, talking about cleaning up a house that people have lived in for many generations. A woman in Ashland told me one time, she said, well, I had to clean out the house of my great grandmother. And she, once again, herself was not young, you know. And she said, oh man, she had kept everything. She said there was one matchbox that said on it, pieces of string too short to save. I don't know if she made that up or not, but I think it's a good story anyway.
My grandparents had a stuffed chicken. Well, it was a cross between a chicken and a guinea, and they so unusual, and it got kicked by a horse, and so they saved it
was
by
like
having it
stuffed.
Yes, and
So
it
it's a
was
real
it was a real chicken, and it was stuffed, and when we had the auction, my aunt came, no, we can't sell, it was cheap. They needed cheap. Can't sell cheap.
Cheap.
Yeah. Anyway, that's and it has made the rounds, and it's, you know, the poor thing is
Losing some feathers.
oh, it looks awful.
It had already been kicked by a
And
horse.
it's right now it's down in Oklahoma. My
Oh, that's
brother's
great.
optometry office.
I love these
So
things.
they have-
Don't you love them?
They have made the rounds, it's been to weddings.
It's been to
and-
weddings.
yeah.
It goes with the family.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's.
I think it's stopped now. I don't
I
think.
love that. You don't think they're doing it anymore. I love those things. Yeah, I want you to try to think about things like that. What have you got that says something to you about your family? What have you got that reminds you of an experience? Or what do you remember seeing? So for example, if you didn't have that line, but you knew about it, that would still be worth telling about, right? Let's see, let's go on. Describe your materials if they're interesting. I like our family Bible because my great grandfather was the one that wrote in it. He was from Virginia, and so the births are recorded like Mary Luke were born at a certain time, certain place, because that was his country, Virginia dialect, And as an English teacher, I love stuff like that. My husband said that his old family Bible kept talking about North Kleiner, that the family was, a lot of them were from North Kleiner. Does anybody know where that is?
North Carolina?
Yeah. Yep, North Kleiner. He also had a good object. His family had, now they were Southerners, right? They had a framed photo of the grave of Stonewall Jackson's left arm. This exists, by the way. Google it. Yeah, they have a photo. Yeah, it exists. Okay. Any other objects before I move on? Okay, yeah. Oh, good. Okay, we got three. Let's go here.
My name is Hutch Mosher.
Hutch.
I'm 82 years from conception.
Oh, good for you. Quite a parent.
I am not sure I know what family means anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. And I'll tell you what. My wife and I married very early. We had a son. He died at the age of 6 months from SIDS. Next year we had a daughter. A few years after that, we had a son.
Yeah.
And then we didn't have any more children. And my wife became a social worker. And while she was doing that, we had 22 foster children.
Oh, wow.
Over a few years.
So family is a broad term.
Yeah. And each one of those children were belonged to us.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
No.
wonderful.
Really.
What a wonderful
So,
story.
After the foster children, we started adopting.
Oh,
And we adopted 5 children.
so it's 5 that you
So
took permanently.
altogether, we have 8 children.
Yeah.
And now there's dozens of grandkids.
Oh,
and
I bet
great-grandkids.
you've got a big Christmas list.
But I have to.
It's amazing.
It all changed a few years back.
Yeah.
Something happened and I started being honest about stuff.
Yeah.
And my family didn't like that.
Mm.
And so as a result of that, I have been ostracized from
Oh, dear.
all of my family.
Oh, that's a shame.
Nobody talks to me.
Oh, dear.
And and I've been homeless for the past 3 months.
Oh, bless your heart.
But what's peculiar about this family, the reason I'm puzzled about it is because I still feel a connection with my family,
Right.
but there's nothing reciprocated.
Oh, bless your heart.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a sad.
And while I've been homeless,
Yeah.
I have met lots of strangers who have become family to me.
Well, good, good. And I think you can consider your family to be whatever you want to consider it to be. Like certainly it's an expandable term, right? I had a couple of other people with women here.
Yeah. So I guess there's kind of a medley of, I've been thinking of this object and I'm like, why is it important? Because I don't even know if it's like acknowledged by whatever. I'm making it sound like really dramatic. I like to do that. Anyway, so I would often explore my grandma's house, and not just my grandma's house, like different places. I've always been an explorer, adventurer.
Right.
Like I want to go everywhere. I want to see everything in the world. Yeah. So I would always go searching upstairs, not like I was gonna find anything new, but I was like, yeah, just do it, whatever. And I always was gravitated toward this trunk by, in one of the bedrooms. It's like, I don't know what era it would be from, probably early 20th century. And there's this little, I don't know if it's glass or whatever, but it's this glass globe and it just has a bunch of shiny pennies in it. And they're all with my mom's birth year on it.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Isn't that a
really
great,
cool.
that's a great object.
Yeah,
love
I
it.
have no idea where it came from, but I love it.
But it's a real, like memorial.
Yes.
You know, a thing to keep.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I love that. I think I had another object here. Oh, good. Okay. What a good idea somebody had.
I had a grandma that kept a journal over the years.
Oh, really?
And so she had all kinds of interesting family trivia stuff. And when my brother passed away from cancer, my cousin sent it to my sister. And it had things about the day my brother was born.
Oh, really?
And with both my grandmas getting together to go down and see the new baby. So that was really special.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah. You know, I've heard quite a few stories about particularly women, farm wives, she was, yeah, who kept, one woman wrote on the wall calendar every day, something about that day, you know?
A lot of it was rain.
Like, yeah,
It was.
well, stuff like that. Well, this woman who was the granddaughter who had inherited it, she said one day, you know, a lot of it was weather. So it was cooking. She said one day it said, well, Jimmy broke his collarbone riding the mule, you know, I guess falling off the mule is probably how he broke it, but yeah, objects like that are good to write about. And I said, well, you should write about that, you know, that calendar. And she said, well, it's just a little bit every day. I said, well, go through and read them and think about what does it tell you about what her life was like, what was important to her. She thinks of one thing to write at the end of every day. The interesting thing is the last day she wrote in it, she was on her deathbed. She said her mother said, bring me the calendar, you know, or her grandmother. And so she kept it up from the time she was a young wife until she passed many, many, many years later, right? Okay, now what I want you to do is, did you hear some vivid descriptions here, don't you? Like the glass globe full of pennies that all have the same date and the lion statue and things like that. An easy way to start a story that revolves around an object is to describe the object. I think the woman with the hideous frog cookie jar, the first thing would be to describe with pride the green frog cookie jar and then go on to the stories that surround it. I always give people some advice about how to start. Pardon me. You'll use the techniques of fiction. Always remember that fiction is about the little stuff, right? And so maybe you want to tell a story about, for example, my great-grandfather who fought in the Civil War came out to Northwest Texas before my hometown, Lubbock, was settled because land was going for $1 an acre and it was just grassland forever. I mean, if you guys think Kansas is flat, you haven't seen Northwest Texas. I mean, this table is wavy compared to it. So he rode a horse. He was out there on a horse and he tried to lasso an antelope, but he couldn't catch it. And finally, he just came home to Bonnie Land because it was too lonesome. It was just too lonesome, you know. And of course, there was oil under the land, and we all wish he had invested in a little bit of it, you know, to $10, 10 acres, something like that. Anyway, so if I were going to tell that story, I would want to talk about what it's like out on the plains, say on a summer day, where you're so far out there that you can't see any human habitations, right? So remember all the exercises you know about writing, the senses, right? So you think about the senses. So I know you guys have been out in the Kansas countryside in the summer at some point. What do you hear? You can hear the birds, right? Silence, right? What else?
The wind.
The wind, absolutely. You can hear the wind, right?
Crickets and cicadas.
Crickets and cicadas. It kind of depends on the time of day, doesn't it? Because you say it again?
Farm equipment.
What was another?
Oh, farm equipment.
Farm equipment. That's right. That's right. We're out beyond human habitation here. So, but yeah, you'd hear the wind.
Oil wells.
Birds.
Oil wells.
Oil wells. This part of Kansas, you would, yeah. That's what I didn't get when my great grandfather didn't buy land. But so, and think about what would you smell? You know, there's a funny thing about smell. It's one of the most primitive. It's the most primitive sense. It's a more primitive part of the brain than the other senses, and it tends to be more evocative. And ironically, at least in English, there are fewer words for smells than there are for other senses. Much fewer, much fewer. So we use words metaphorically, like something has a sharp smell, but that's really a touch word, isn't it? It's not a smell word, right? Or something has a sweet smell, but that's a taste word, right? So, but see if you can think of what would it smell like out there in the country, out there in the Kansas countryside, the plains.
On my favorite days, you can smell.
Stockyards.
You can smell what?
On some of my favorite days, you can smell petrichor, which is
Oh,
the smell of the grass right before it rains.
absolutely. Yeah. He brings up that you can smell the smell of the grass right before or after it rains. That is a wonderful smell. Sweet clover is one of my favorite Kansas smells. You can smell sweet clover. Yeah, you might smell a little buffalo dung depending on where you are.
Well, when I drove here today, they were cutting hay, and that's something that you always would smell. And then I had a unique one last night. I walked into, I live on a farm.
Yeah.
So please don't judge me when I say this. I am not a crazy chicken lady, okay?
No, the crazy chicken lady is over there. She's got the chicken.
We have chickens, and I had cleaned out one of the coops yesterday. And I walked in yesterday to go lock them up after having been in town, and my husband did chores. And I walked in and it smelled like the poultry barn at the Kansas State Fair. And it wasn't that terrible smell. It was the smell of shavings and chicken manure, I guess, because it's not the same smell that you would get in a horse barn at the fair.
Right. I know what you mean. I used to always go to the chicken house.
But that's the first time it's ever hit me that I walked in and it smells like the fair.
Yeah. You know, another good thing about chickens is the noise when they're calm.
Yes.
The noise they make.
And I have one that I haven't figured out which one she is, but she makes a funny noise. She doesn't sound like the rest of the chickens.
She's speaking another language.
She's speaking a foreign language too.
She's a foreign.
Okay.
She's a foreign chick.
Okay. In other words, when you tell your stories, now notice that if I told that story about my great grandfather, he didn't leave any writing telling me what it was like out on the Texas plains before Lubbock was built. But that's okay because I know what it was like, right? I can go see what it was like. Go to the tall grass prairie, see what it's like there, right? You can go see, but you can also use your own experience. And if that bothers you, then you can say, I imagine it must have been like this. I imagine it must have been like this. And that's just fine. That's how we tell stories. That's how we talk, right? So, okay, let me see here. Okay. Tell the good, the bad, the sad. Who are the rascals? What are the tragedies? And then I've got the thing I just did. Find physical ways to describe emotion. What does it feel like to be that lonely? What does it feel like to be that sad? What does it feel like for two sisters to come see their sister's first baby in the hospital? You know, what are those feelings like in the body? Remember to use dialogue. Okay, you may use dialogue. So you can say, remember, if you want a disclaimer, you can always say, nobody's reported this dialogue, but I'm guessing that probably this is what they said. And that's just fine. And that works. It makes your story better. Good advice for writing. Beginning and ending. Never begin with a character's background. Never begin with my grandmother was born in 1873. Nobody cares. Yeah. To make them care, you have to tell us something interesting about her, and then we'll care about when she was born. So my grandmother always wore another man's wedding ring on her left hand. She was born in, you see what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And then I go back to the story. So interest us first so that we'll be interested. Nothing more boring than dates in general. So if you can say 20 years later or 150 years ago or something like that, by the time he was 7, rather than using a date, that's often more evocative for readers. So end when it feels like the end. Oh, I always say begin with what sticks in your mind. Whatever it is that sticks in your mind. For example, with the Penny Globe, what stuck in her mind was going up there in the attic just to fish around and look for stuff because she was exploring. That might be the good place to start for that one. Let's see. End when it feels like an end. Don't sum up. I always tell my students when I get to the end, it says in conclusion, then I'm bored and I know the writer's bored. You can tell the writer's bored, right? So I say that. And if you feel like, well, it needs an ending, probably it doesn't. My experience is that usually it doesn't. You've written the story out. You've written yourself out on that story, and you think, oh, well, it needs an ending. Probably it doesn't. Probably you're fine. And then general advice that all of you already know. Never worry about how to begin. This is what keeps people from writing. Begin with what sticks in your head. Okay. Never worry about length. Half-page story is great. A 20-page story is great. I know you guys have encountered flash fiction, flash memoir, flash creative nonfiction, right? It can be a few sentences. It can be a few words, you know. It can be half a page. It can be longer. It doesn't matter. Don't let those things keep you from writing because short things are good, right? Let's see. Write right now. You all know that. Read your word out loud. Shorter words are better than longer ones. There's a long explanation about the history of English in there. It's not true necessarily in other languages, but I'm not going to tell you because we'd be here another 30 minutes. And then I recommend some books. William Zenser, in 1976, he wrote On Writing Well. He was an old reporter and a nonfiction writer. Very, very good. I read a book about baseball spring training once because William Zenser had written that. I have no interest at all in baseball, but it was a great book. So his book on writing well is really, really good. Most books on writing are really boring. I don't know why, but most of them are. He also wrote Inventing the Truth, The Art and Craft of Memoir, and that's a good one. Read Bailey White's Mama Makes Up Her Mind for examples of how to tell true stories. Have you read that? Have you read anybody, Bailey White? Oh, you must read it. I'm sure your library has it. Mama Makes Up Her Mind. Some of her stories are really short. Some are 4 or 5 pages, and they're all about her family, and they're hysterically funny. She's a Georgian, I think it'll give you some examples about how to handle family stories. She doesn't worry too much about truth values, I think, but she's a Southerner and we don't. Any questions or comments? I think we're supposed to end about now.
Yeah.
I'm